Hello, everybody. Once again, welcome back. This is a short chapter. This is chapter 13 of the book, The Birch Bark House, called One Horn's Protection. Remember who One Horn is, or was. Remember, he was that buck who only had one horn. This is such a good sugaring year, said Day Day. We'll be able to pay off most of our bill at the trader. I want to come, yelled Pinch. Day Day was loading his big pack frame with bound maycucks of sugar. There was much, much more than they would use all year. Old Tallow had her fill of sugar, too, and Nakoma said that in all of her memory, there had never been a sugar year like this one. At the trader's, Day Day paid off the winter's debt and bought a length of blue broadcloth for Mama to sew into a dress. He bought Pinch some calico trim for a pair of moccasins and a piece of velvet cloth for Angeline to use as she wished. For Nokomis, sewing needles and a cup of shining copper. For Omakayas, he bought a small cross stamped out of German trade silver. The night Day Day gave her the cross, she sewed it onto the front of her dress. Andig loved the look of it and tried constantly to pluck it from her dress. He landed on her shoulder over and over and nearly hung upside down to try and peck at it with his beak. In the morning, Andig greeted Omakayas with fluttering wings, ducking his head to accept a little scratch, cooing with a sweet and gurgling sound. Omakayas had never heard a crow make such a sound before, and she knew it was a special sign of affection. She was certain of it one day when Andig hopped toward her with a twig in his beak. She carefully took it, thanked her crow, and laid the twig aside. All that day, wherever she turned, there was Andig, hopeful, carrying a piece of bark for her. At last, Omakayas scratched Andig's neck and sat down to feed him and talk to him. He listened, his lids closed blue, his head tucked down in quiet bliss. "You want to make a nest with me, don't you?" said Omakayas. "I can't. I love you, but I'm not a bird." She was surprised to find that as she said this, tears formed in her eyes. Andig loved her so much. "We'll have to find another crow," she said very gently. Andig didn't seem to hear. Still, after that, he would leave for hours at a time. Now Omakayas was afraid that he would be taken for a wild bird and shot or killed. She attached a bit of red wool to his leg. Andig managed to pull it off with his clever beak. He could untie almost anything if he worked hard enough. One day, Omakayas, excuse me a second, guys, the girl's having a little trouble here with the iPad. One day, while Omakayas was working just outside the cabin in the cool air, watching the fire Nokomis had made to smoke some of the fish Day Day caught just at ice breakup, there was a sudden harsh cawing of crows. A group of wheeling, excited black birds passed overhead. Just like that, without a goodbye, Andig jumped off her shoulder. He flew, zinging upward into the midst of the flock, and in a second he was indistinguishable from the others. Omakayas felt her heart squeeze shut painfully as the birds passed out of sight. He was gone. Maybe she should have cut away essential feathers from his wings, but she couldn't stand to think of him as a captive. No, she decided, though her heart hurt, it was better that he join with his own kind. He wasn't human, no matter how often he said, "Gay go pinch," or greeted her at the door, croaking out, "Aneen, Aneen." Andig stole and hoarded bits of bright cloth and shiny metal shards. He wasn't human. He was still a crow. And she couldn't change that. She couldn't change that any more than she could change being who she was. Omakayas, who heard the voices of plants and went dizzy. Omakayas, who talked to bear boys and received their medicine. Omakayas, who missed her one brother and resented the other, who envied her sister. Omakayas, the little frog, whose first step was a hop. Omakayas, who lost her friend. She thought she had cried all the tears she had to cry, but she found there were some left for Andig. Omakayas put her hands to her face and sobbed until she felt just enough better. After all, she thought, Andig was wild, and she had always known it, always expected this moment to come. The thought comforted her. There in the yard, looking into the heart of the fire, Omakayas suddenly experienced a strange awareness. Like Andig, she couldn't help being just who she was. Omakayas in this skin, in this place, in this time. Nobody else, no matter what. She wouldn't ever be another person or really know the thoughts of anyone but her own self. She closed her eyes. For a moment she felt as though she was falling from a great height, plunging through air and blackness, tumbling down with nothing to catch her. With a start of fear, she opened her eyes and felt herself gently touch down right where she was, in her own body. Here. Wow. So why do you think this chapter is called One Horn's Protection? Think about it. We'll talk about it later. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good night.